Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Angular Air. I'm your host, Alyssa Nichol, and with me today, as two shining panelists below me, we have Justin. How are you doing today, darling?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you? It's
Excellent.
Friday. Yes.
It is, and you got like the right vibe with your lights. I love it.
Got some little lights. Got a little new Angular logo lights. Yeah.
And how are you doing, Mike? How you doing?
Check. Can you hear me?
You sound great. Yeah.
No, I had just disconnected my mic and was
Did you?
reconnecting.
Did that
I may have
happen?
been doing some stupid things right before we went.
Good timing.
Right? I unplugged and replugged in my mic. Wanted to make sure you could hear me. That's all.
Excellent. You sound beautiful. You might be mukbanging with us today. I heard your lunch just got delivered. We will need details as the show continues. Hey, chat. Good to see you, Nathan.
Sure.
Oh, yes. The Lord's chicken. Is it correct me, because this is, I think, is like the second time I've tried to say your name in chat. Is it Shoaib? Am I saying that wrong? Just like phonetic me. Good to see you. Hi, Lars. Lars is already starting off hot with an opinion, and I think the boys are going to really gang up today, but we'll get to that. So our guest of honor is Sander. How are you doing today, darling?
Well, I was doing fine until someone made me do something that made me bleed.
Yeah, that was me. That was definitely me. Sander, for those new to the community, can you do a quick intro for people who've not had the pleasure of meeting your gloriousness?
Hi. I'm Sander. I'm an Angular GD for a little while now. I'm building applications for a little longer while, like for over 4 decades or something like that. I'm doing stuff. I like building stuff with Angular. I like to have opinions. Pretty strong ones overall.
Hey, Jeffrey, good to see you. No, I asked, my GDE friends, I was like, can anyone just come and talk standalone with me? Because I'm having some feelings. And apparently I'm very alone in these feelings. So we'll see. We'll see.
He wants to keep modules.
I didn't say that. I didn't say. I just said that we, as GDEs or thought leaders in the community, can be a little high and mighty with our. You're not on the latest, right? Like, you're not using everything that just shipped yesterday. Like, I feel like we can be a little elitist in that fact, and I think we should be more understanding to individuals, companies, massive repos, right? That like just can't yet, right? They can't stand alone. So what can they do in the meantime? Although I know you boys are like, absolute, like some of you are like, absolutely not. We should just do it.
Right.
Like,
I think that it's our responsibility to paint the perfect picture. This is what you should be trying to do. And perfect's probably not the word, right? But paint a more ideal picture of what your applications could and should look like. And then with anything in software, there's trade-offs. Whether or not you have any roadblocks standing in your way, legitimate ones, because there are quite a few, that would prevent you from getting from where you currently are to that ideal situation.
You mean customers and management?
And tech debt and users and team members and
Tooltips.
lack of knowledge. Yeah.
Wait,
I don't have those things.
Yeah, if we're getting rid of NG modules, can we get rid of tooltips too? That's just the same time. I mean, that's like, yeah.
And apparently bring back NG Deep all the way. So it's just like we're just.
Oh no, that just never went anywhere. That just needs to stay. I'm not normally opinionated, but when I am, NG Deep.
We really do need t-shirts though. Bring it back. Okay, so just for reference, Sander, you said, was it you who said you just did a massive update? Can you tell us about were you like updating Angular versions or just updating to standalone?
I was just moving to standalone, and I was not doing it alone. I was bringing my entire teams actually, and I took the hurdle. Hi, Steve. I took the hurdle of tackling down the last couple of modules by myself. But this is a huge project. I'm now working for FedEx, and they have it's a pretty large enterprise. I think you might have heard of them.
I just love it.
And-
They use Angular. That makes me want to like only use FedEx now. But I mean, UPS could as well. I don't know.
I don't know
Mike
why
definitely
Mike left
was
the
upset
building
at-
out.
He was very upset.
Maybe.
So you just did the update, and are you completely standalone now, or are there still?
We are
some...
completely standalone. No, we removed the very last module like a couple of days ago, and I really did my happy dance. It was a little bit more work than I expected, but that was mostly because the way modules were working, things tripled into tests, and basically when we removed modules, everything kept on working except for the tests.
The test.
All the freaking tests broke. So fixing the tests, basically what we need to do is make sure the tests are importing the right things.
Okay.
And there are a lot of cutoffs there where they just imported a module and everything magically worked.
Did you at any point like automate that, or was it all very hands-on, like for each
It was
test?
all very hands-on for tests because it is just what it is. And it's not a project that is small, so there is some time, and there are different ways of building tests. So automating this thing would be possible, but probably way more work than just plow your way to
doing it. Yeah. That totally makes sense. Was that the only hang-up test?
Yeah, it was only tests. There are a couple of things that you have to take care of if you are providing things in modules. One, you are doing it the wrong way anyway. But you need to take some extra care there because you need to provide it in a place that makes sense now. Most of the times that is just in the app config, which is now like app config and not app module something, but just config. But sometimes you need to provide it in a component or in a route, depending on the usage. And that's the biggest catch to make sure that you do that on the right level. It can be done if you say, I'm just going to put this provide everywhere where the module was. You end up with boatloads of provides that are probably necessary. Right. Also, provider arrays, provide functions are a really easy way to take away the config you now see in from root. The for root things, that is basically providing config. Using a provide function easily replaces that. And the first time I went to that, I have no idea how to fix this. No clue whatsoever. And then I was actually working on it. This is so much simpler than it was before. Because you don't have to do this strange dance with modules and return
module provider, whatever.
Module provider from a method which is super strange. So it cleans up so much stuff. But the most important thing is from going to standalone is, and that is not being talked about a lot, but is way better bundling.
Bundling.
Yeah, your bundles improve hugely. And still, if you have too large of a modules, you might end up with still one bundle that is slightly too large, but it will becomes much easier to break it up in smaller pieces if everything is standalone. Because if it's standalone, you basically can just take a component or a couple of components and move it somewhere else, fix the imports, and be done. And that makes...
So before we dive too deep into why we'd want to do standalone, I want to ask, and chat asked a question too, so I'll bring this on the thing. When you did all these changes, and you're saying it's a massive amount of changes, how did you strategize making commits and making PRs that you have to get reviewed? Did you break it down into small chunks, or did you make one big, 300 line file or 300 files change that somebody had to review? How did that go down?
Yes and yes and yes.
Okay, I see. I understand. Yeah.
No.
That's what the week, what you felt like that day, right? I'm just done.
Actually, Well, actually, this is a repo that is an NX mono repo, and it has hundreds of libs. So we took one lib at a time, but some of the libs are huge. And while I was working on it, I actually started the first libs. I just took the lib, run the schematic on it, throw away the modules, and fixed what was broken. But that works for a small lib. Mm-hmm. But if you go to a bigger lib, you will end up with a tiny problem that you cannot. You have no idea where you have to start fixing stuff because this is just too much. So when I was working on the bigger modules that have submodules and stuff in there, I was just basically taking down one module at a time because those big modules had modules in there that had modules in there that had modules in there. Big application. So I basically started that. Okay, I'm going to take this module. I update the test. Discover this thing. Well, okay, commit. And every module I did a commit. And in the end,
at that point, like when you would commit for that one,
yeah.
Was the whole thing working or not until you finished the whole lib?
No, I made sure that it was working all the time. I kept on, because most things that broke were tests, and if you change all of the things, that means you have to fix all of the tests. And that is it's not a fun task. It needs to be done, and the test needs to be improved because so much of the fragility of tests comes from this. And now we are in a better place because the tests are way more robust. I can already see that there is less flakiness in testing. I really hope that they are indeed going to deliver the new test runners soon. Douglas told me he was going to ship it, I think, in the last version, but I didn't see it, so probably he didn't have it ready.
Yeah, in my mind, because you said you started with a schematic, in my mind there were two different ways to start aside from the schematic. And one is just go into an individual component or piece of code and say, all right, it is referenced in a module. I'm going to remove that reference and get that one working individually, which, going back to the Git side of things with pull requests, could give you quite atomic pieces. And then you can eventually, once you removed all the dependencies on a given module, delete that.
That was actually the path I was taking. I was doing the standalone schematic for the whole modules, including all of the submodules. So all components and directives and things became standalone, but I left the modules in there.
Mm-hmm. The
next step.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then the next steps is taking out the modules one at a time. That was actually my approach. Going big bang on our sizable project is a no-go. You just shoot your own foot.
That was my other idea. What you should do is you open up your application, you got your terminal, and just run rm-rf star.module.ts,
exactly,
and then YOLO and just go in and fix what's broken.
I feel like that's the way to do life. Yeah.
That worked for the to-do app, right? The to-do apps that we build. Because I think that'd be perfect.
Okay, like Sander, if you did that to the enterprise app, and then you were like, and like worked on it to like fix it, how long would you be hurrying? Like,
if I would just delete the modules and then start making it work again?
Yeah.
Without having, because if you're deleting modules, you don't know what the dependencies are.
Yeah.
So good luck.
Like a day.
Yeah, that's like, no, that would be forever probably.
Okay, too long. I gotcha.
No, let leave forever, because you will never ever get this back to work again.
Yeah, because then you're like, you'd fix one thing and there's another thing. Like, there's so much interdependency that like that kind of thing would be so challenging to work through step by step.
You need to remove module by module. You can basically convert all components and stuff to standalone in one go. That is not a big problem. And then all components are standalone already, but they are also still in all of those modules. And then you need to take out module by module. That is
That's how
where
I've approached it, and that's my favorite. Like, because you can really isolate and go, I can make a component standalone. It's pretty straightforward. It's
Yeah.
still coming into the same module. You just import it in a different way, and now you feel very good about like that lightweight change that somebody could review and feel confident that it's fine. And then you can focus on the complex part, which is removing the module, and where that really needs to have some vetting and extra work around making sure that change is stable, right?
Semi-related, do you guys have a cutoff point for like when you will commit something? Is it decided by your team or just like your own personal heart of like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I don't do granular enough, but then sometimes I see other people's commits and I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I do very granular. Like, so I didn't know, like, where do you cut it off for something like that, Justin, when you're like, okay, I changed. Like, do you wait until the entire component is like standalone and it's being imported properly and then you like ship that? Or do you just like, oh, I changed, like, I don't know, like, how do you?
I'm glad you asked. This is one of my favorite topics to really help teach and talk about. Like, I want to have, I always focus on very mindful, small commits, right? And Sanders mentioned it earlier, like the commit should work, right? The commit, whatever code that you commit, like that commit should be stable. So like, I try and not have any commits where if somebody pulled that and they only had the one commit that it didn't, things wouldn't run, right? So always have a commit that's stable. Make it as small as possible, as isolated to focus on what it's dealing with, right? And I see this all the time, and I try and teach this all the time. Like people, we gravitate towards, well, I've got this requirement, and I need to make these 2 changes, right? But they're really isolated changes, but they're kind of simple. So I end up just doing them and putting them in one commit. The thing that I really talk about from enterprise development is like, if you isolate those 2 things and really understand like its scope to just what it's dealing with, then you have the ability to do things like roll back or cherry pick or be agile to the changes that might come, right? Maybe it's like, oh well, that second part we decided business we can't release that, so we got to pull that back out. Well, when they're separated, and you really just think about like the small chunk that you're doing and make those commits. And then the pushback sometimes that happens is like, well, then I'm making like 70 PRs, right? And everybody's reviewing. And it's like, okay, well, you could still kind of take that same approach and say, well, I'm going to have 3 commits in one PR. And if you isolate the commits and partition the commits, then you're still having gains there.
But like for development, when you're like going to write and you're like, this requirement is going to have 5 commits. Do you, from like just Justin's personal preference, start and like make that requirement happen and then you go and break up things? Or do you say, no, I will be like diligent and we're only going to work on this first commit and then commit it? Like, how do you?
Yeah. So we talked about this in an episode a while ago when I mentioned that like, writing code is like art, right? Like we enjoy the process of writing code. So I go different ways. Sometimes I come into it and I'm ready and I understand the partitioning. And so I do that work that way. Sometimes I just throw all the stuff on the table and get things working and figured out. And then look at it and go, okay, how do I partition this out? How do I separate it? Right. And I'll use tooling like in WebStorm, you can set up different like commit sets and stuff like that. And so it's really easy to kind of like, I can set up like 3 or 4 and say, okay, this is for this one, this is for this one. And I just move my code around to isolate that after I've solved the problem.
But
so you like to
want to clarify though, because one thing you said, Justin, of that every commit should be buildable. I just want to add a little asterisk on there that says every public commit, because sometimes you have internal workflow that you're working locally or what have you. You need to stash something to move it on. But so you may have some things interim of, hey, I want to try this, and I try it and it may not be in a building state, but I'm essentially setting this aside. I want to create a commit so I have something that I can come back to. But when you actually create a PR, those are the ones that should be at a buildable, releasable state.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like the commits that I push that are going to get into the main branch, those commits are that way. Yeah. But yeah.
Don't feel like you need to have a workflow where everything always has to be in a working state, because sometimes with that art that we're creating, there's chaos in there.
Yeah.
Also, sometimes you want to share it with a coworker and say, hey, I'm running into this. Can you take a look? It's very hard to push something that's not working. That is working.
That's a good clarification, because then you have a public commit, but it's also not a pull request.
Right. No, that was another.
I'm just pushing it there for sharing, not necessarily for, hey, I'm submitted this as my solution to
Mhm.
a problem.
Yeah,
or
and
feature
that was
loss.
something that I really wanted to add. That like, okay, a pull request can have many commits. One of my last pull things had like 40 commits in there, and that was basically every commit was taking off one modules, but it was like a huge library with very much things in there.
That also
And
makes
then
the review process a lot easier as well.
yeah,
What?
Things are broken up
Which
into
thing?
multiple commits.
Oh, the fact that they're
Parsing
broken.
through inside,
Oh.
yeah. If they want, they can look at just one. Overall, there is like a very good test suite. There is also a very good end-to-end test suite, and there is also a very good Q&A department. So if I break something, probably someone will start yelling at me before it goes to production.
Before it goes to production.
That's funny because I got a friend who they have the exact opposite policy of like everything is discovered in production frequently, and I'm like, how is this a pattern? Like it's like some people really live this way. Like it's real. Your way sounds great, Sander.
Well, yeah, this I'm very lucky in this company because I have worked on projects in the part that basically say, okay, we are delivering to customers, and
Yeah.
if there is a problem, it needs to be fixed in the live version because there is basically no other way to work on those things.
What that really means is like it's got to be fixed at like 12:30 a.m. by you. So
That's
good luck
exactly
debugging
what
right?
it. That's
Right.
exactly what it means.
Hey! I don't know why you guys complaining about, because I remember when I will build software, when our customers had a problem, I had to try to understand the problem, recreate the bug, fix the problem, compile the code, put it on a medium, drive to the customer, install it on all of their computers.
Drive to the customer.
Yes, drive to the customer.
Oh my god.
I don't know if I appreciate the laughter at that.
I can't imagine such a crazy world. It's just funny.
It's everything from before 1992.
Wait.
And that
What?
wasn't putting it on a USB stick and driving it. That was like burning a DVD
No.
or CD, right?
Or diskettes.
Or did
Wait. Like,
Oh,
so
he
you would
does.
put your code on a CD?
No, not your code.
Like the working version of the app? Like what? What are you putting on the
Compiled
CD?
version.
The compiled version of your app on a CD or on a diskette, and you drove to your customer, and then you ran code by all the computers to update the computers.
Wait. You weren't like going computer to computer. There was like a local
yeah.
there was like a local network set up so you could do it like on one computer and then it would download to all of the computers.
That was later on, yes, but not in the beginning.
Oh wow. And did you all hate this process or did you just not know any better so it was fine?
It's not that we didn't know any better. There were no other solutions.
Yeah.
There was
So
not another option. So
okay.
that's how you dealt. And it's quite easy to circumvent. Just don't write bugs. And that's the way I learned working. So because if you wrote a bug, it costed you a freak load of time. And usually those bugs are discovered at Friday, 4 p.m.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So you have no weekend whatsoever.
Mhm.
So you can drive to your customer on Monday, 9 a.m. to fix their problem.
You want to talk about motivation? If you don't want to go see person X, and we'll just say Timmy, if you don't want to go see Timmy, if Timmy bothers you and gets into conversations that you don't want to get into, that's some motivation that if I don't introduce any more bugs, I don't have to go and spend some time talking to Timmy.
Your code better be gold. Oh my god, I love it.
It's like NG modules, right? That's just what it was at the time, right? But now we have standalone, so there's different ways.
I know, and it kind of
deliver,
hurts my feelings when you bash on it. Like Sander earlier was like, "Oh, can you believe this craziness we used to do?"
There's
And I'm
no
like,
bash. That's not a bash. That's a matter of saying, hey, there was something that was in place, whether it's walking on Ford or NG modules, but something better has come along, like not having to walk and talk to Timmy.
Okay, right, yeah.
And standalone. Those things are newer and better, and
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
We can look back on how things were and appreciate how much better things are now.
Pavel asked a great question about how do you encourage management to invest in a migration to standalone? I guess you spent a couple of weeks to do it, but on the first glance for business, from their point of view, there's not too much for business value.
Excellent. I got that one. Sander's phone number is 123.
Yeah, that is really my phone number. Go try that. I completely lost my train of thought.
Did you have to convince your team, or was your team already like, yeah, we're going to standalone? Like, was that even a conversation you had to do?
The conversation was mostly done before I was there.
Okay.
I'm on this team like almost 2 months now. No, 2 months now, exactly. But I helped the conversation and explained that it is a such much cleaner model of thinking about code. Because right now you can look at a component or a directive and you know what the thing needs. And if you want to move it somewhere else, it's easy to move the thing. And that is my main pickup. Code organization becomes so much more easy. And what I always hated about modules, and I think the first time I raged against modules was right before version 2.0 was released. I talked to Mishko and say, hey, can we get rid of those stupid things?
In 2.0?
Yeah.
Wow, early days.
I didn't like them from the get-go.
Oh, that's funny.
But there were good reasons back then. There was really no technical way around them. They were needed because the tooling was not far along enough. So yeah, I tried. I looked at source code of Angular and I tried getting rid of modules, but it was a no-go with that state of tooling back then.
So
hold on, the portability is a very good selling point. The idea of have your code being able to move it around because it knows what it needs, meaning the component knows what dependencies it has directly without having to infer them from a module. But also to your point, Sander, the bundle sizes are reduced because you can isolate things a little bit better and have more shared pieces that
your bundles become better just because of getting rid of modules. It is not that you are getting much smaller bundles right from the get-go, but if you look at the bundles, you will see they are a little bit smarter.
Yeah,
and they become more autonomous. And if you start moving your code around, you will see that you can start breaking up these big bundles. That is what it was really, really hard to do with ng modules still in place.
The other big selling point that I see is it's kind of in alignment with the portability. It's the readability that as I look at this component that does this one particular thing, well, how is it doing that? What is it using to do that? Oh, it's pulling in this particular code and it's using these dependencies because I can see that in the same file where my component is defined to have that all in one place and without having to make a mental jump of saying, oh, what is it using? I'm not sure. It's using this module. Then you have to go to that module and find out explicitly what it's using.
Mm-hmm.
And only to find out that there is like a bunch of modules imported into that module, and then you go and that goes on and on and on. So basically, you have no idea what you have available in the template.
Yeah, and there was the idea of, all right, there's going to be some fluff in there of looking at that dependency list with things like ngIf, ng4, ng-switch that have now been moved into control flow, and you don't need to explicitly bring those into your dependency list. So that list is essentially what of the non-framework stuff do I need to be able to use to be able to for this component to work. So, and I know we talk about components, but the same thing with directives and pipes and what have you, but components are easier to just focus on and think about.
The like wins we've talked about to summarize is like the portability, the readability with architecture cleanup, the bundle size, less fragile testing, I think is like a byproduct of like if you do have testing and you end up
rewriting. But it is a big byproduct. It's really important because testing a large application takes forever.
And Sander won't yell at you. That's another positive point.
Yeah.
I love this question. It's such a great question because, like, Alyssa, you just listed out those things, and I think we could break it down even further because the question of like, how do you encourage management, right? Like, we know as developers, like this feels productive. This feels, it's going to put us in a better state. We're going to have these wins in all these places as developers and the ergonomics of that. Right.
Yes.
But that really doesn't translate to something that management can use as a number to understand that, like, hey, if you do all these changes, we're going to have to allocate QA resources to test it all. We have to allocate the time to do the dev work. We need to make sure all the things are functioning and working to pull this off, right? And so how do you quantify that to management that there's a return on investment there? And we talk about the bundle size and performance. If you have good performance measuring of your application, then you have this potential to say, hey, we can show an increase in that number, right? If you have good, performance metrics around your testing running, right? Or your efficiency to build new features. Cause that's another thing that I think that, like, when we talk about standalone and the ergonomics, is like, now you can build more rapidly. You could implement experiences more rapidly with standalone rather than NG modules. But how do you measure that? And how do you show that to, like, a management and say, this is what we're going to get, right? And sell it, I guess.
I think a big one to add on to the list but it's going to be later down the line, would be to say more future proof, just because one day we will not have modules, and then you get to deal with that. So at what point do you want to start? I always thought it was something, though, that, like, if management was tough to deal with, that you just kind of, like, like, each new feature is now standalone.
The conversion of a component to standalone that still is imported in a module, right? Is like, that's one of those things you could do. It's under the covers. It's internal working, right? So you say, yeah, just make the time and dev to do that. But that removal of the actual module, that's where you run the risk of things breaking, and then it's like, people need to know that,
but if you have small enough modules, you can take out one module at a time. If you want to working on a feature, you can say, okay, I'm going to take this out, and you can just allocate a little bit of time for that, because if you need to do it all at once, it is a humongous task. But if you do it piecemeal, it is really doable, because you're already working on that thing. You probably need to update the tests anyway. So
I want to go to the one thing that you said at the beginning there. You said, if you have small enough modules. And you and I have worked on an application project together, Sander, where there were components that had thousands of lines of code. So that is a big if that things are structured in a way that makes it easier to do that, because there are some applications that are written for whatever reason. I'm not looking to place blame on anybody or anything, that are not in a state to be able to do that. But if you can take those bigger pieces and break them down into smaller pieces, as you create those smaller pieces, you can create them with the future more in mind with standalone components.
Yeah, I really like standalone because it gives you autonomous parts of your application. This part is responsible for this part of the application, and it's not depending. It is depending on whatever it imports, but that's it. It's very, very clear. And
I like them from the standpoint of, with the work that I've been doing, that with a lot of migrations from old technology to new, the legacy build systems can be cumbersome and have an effect on developer experience. So a lot of times I will try and create a component in a separate application in isolation, and the portability that standalone gives you to say, all right, everything that I know or that I need is all right there. So I know what I need to move around to be able to bring that into the bigger application, just for speed of writing tests and running tests and integrating into a larger system, but to be able to create something in isolation. Kind of like a manual storybook thing.
Yeah, totally. So that thing that we do as developers when we're going in to write some code is we'll usually try and see, like, is there some way that I can refine something while I'm in there? Can I refactor a little bit? So I'm making some code change to this component. While I'm in there, I see something and maybe I want to clean it up as part of this task, right? Like, that's another thing that I've incorporated in that sort of thing is like, okay, well, while we're doing this change to this component, let's also make it standalone, right? And so you can chip away at those things as part of your regular work to get things like, if I ever have to touch a component, it's not standalone, part of the work that I'm doing is making it standalone at that moment.
Yeah.
That
And to be
sounds
clear-
like drive-by. That is a
Something
lot
what?
of drive-by shooting. That is like drive-by updates. I like it.
Yeah.
So,
But I
one
mean,
of the-
it allows you to kind of progress towards that, right?
Yeah.
Where if you can't allocate the entire time to say, let's take a full-on epic to do it all, you can chip away at it.
So, Justin, to your point earlier, when you were talking about the idea of making an individual component standalone, but still have it be part of the module. From the component side, it's pretty straightforward. You need your dependencies, you need your imports, and potentially providers. Whatever the component needs gets defined within there. From the module side of the things, what you're doing there is taking it out of the declarations because it doesn't need to be declared in a module anymore, and moving it into the import and export array so that the module still exposes that component in the same way. So that if somebody were to be using that module, they still get access to it. But the means in which it does that is the standalone-ish way.
Once everything is like standalone, like the individual pieces, except for the main module, is that then pretty easy to just be like, and you're dead? Or no, it's still painful, like to kill off
The
that
main
final
mo-
like the main module.
The main module, the top level thing, is the easiest one to get rid of.
So
It
I'm
is
still
like-
a little scared about it because I haven't hit the issue yet. But like when we talk about that main module, we're going to like import providers from, if we still have some ng modules somewhere, or if we're using a third-party library, then we're doing this import module or import providers from, which so far I haven't seen any issues, right? But I'm still a little nervous that like I might do that on one thing and that something's not going to work, right?
It
but-
works. I've done it in.
All right, I
I've
feel
done
better.
it. It works.
There's always that one except that is it works except or unless or but.
Yeah, unless. Well, we had one problem. Not a problem. There was a translation thing we had in our application that was used everywhere, and it was exposing pipes and services and a module, and freaking everywhere the module was imported. And everything just worked, but as soon as you did something, all the tests were broken, and that was always revolving around this translations thing. So those are the ones to look out for. But this was the first project where I saw something that was imported outside of Angular stuff that was imported everywhere. And imported as a module, not like, okay, I'm going to use the pipe, I'm going to import the pipe, which can now be done, but that was not possible like a while ago, so I cannot really blame. But they started using the pipe, but then didn't update the import. So, yeah.
And then did you have to do like import providers from to continue to use that? And you have to solve that at that spot?
I had some painful moments. Well,
it's more than an episode to describe it.
Yeah, it's. I don't want to go into details, and I don't want to mention the module by name because it's not their fault. They did all the right things, but the whole setup and the way it was used, it was painful. But we got rid of that one too, and that was the last thing. And we have no more .module.ts files in our application or in our repo even.
You on 17.1.1? Is that where you're on? Yeah.
17.0, not 1.
Oh, you still got that Vite vulnerability.
Oh yeah, don't.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make it weird.
That sounded a little elitist. I don't know. I thought we were going away from that.
I tried.
But I've done this, and I've worked on other applications with the 5,000 lines templates. I would not start moving that one away from modules anytime soon. It
Yeah,
looks,
sometimes there's other steps that you need to take as part of that refactoring process.
yeah.
That those monolithic type pieces of code need to be broken down, whether or not it's a monolithic function, whether or not it's a monolithic template or component or class or whatever it is, to be able to break those down into smaller pieces.
If
And
anything
those
is
aren't easy
large,
tasks to
yeah.
get your mind around what all is in there and what pieces can and should be pulled out.
If something is longer than 150 lines, it's wrong. It should be broken up. It's quite easy, but well, 150 lines is a little bit charged. Sometimes you have things that are a little bit larger, but it's a pretty good rule of thumb. 150 is it larger than 150 lines? Does it have too much responsibilities? Probably, yeah. It should be made smaller.
Is that a hard rule? Like, what happens if I get to 151? Or is it like, yeah, but there's 17 comments in there.
Yeah, but are you one of those devs that like does all the fancy crap just to get like the whole function on one line? Like, is that you, Sonder? Like, are you like?
I have a wide screen, so I can have 240. No, I'm vertically spacing a lot.
Okay.
I use comments. I use comment blocks. And sometimes if I'm going one line over, I'm going, like I have a lot of comments here, so I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
It is about the amount of,
maintainability.
yeah, it's the readability and maintainability, which is the readability and maintainability are the most important things you can provide to the ones that come after you, which might be you always, but sometimes it are other people's. And I like to take mercy on the one after me, because I know quite often it's me.
Yeah, let's be clear. Like, you 1 month later is not you. It's a totally different you.
That's
right?
absolutely
like when I
true,
look at my code 1 month later, I'm like,
Yep.
who wrote this? What's going on?
Yeah.
What? Oh yeah.
Oh, that was me. Whoops.
Oh, yeah. What was it? I don't even remember that
What?
time in my life. It was like 3 weeks ago.
What does Git blame say? Me?
Right.
Oh yeah. You just like kind of like slowly roll away from your desk, like, oh, we need a lunch break.
And I can't even get away from it because I'm like, that's some other no, that's Schwarzenegger.
That's
Maybe it's a different Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Maybe, right?
Maybe you've got some doppelgangers out there. Who knows? You know? Oh, we got a great question in chat when we're ready for it, because I think Justin and I talked about this recently.
I've been thinking about that since I saw it pop up. Hybrid is definitely a reasonable standpoint. Again, we talked about the idea of like incrementally removing or migrating from module based to standalone.
Right.
That you're going to have periods of time that, again, with Justin's point, that it may still be a component that you've moved to standalone may still be part of a module, because maybe you're not ready to tackle the consumers of that module, or other pieces within that module. You're not there, because essentially what you're doing at this point is cleaning up tech debt. It's not tech debt for things that aren't supported, but getting to the latest version of something is still considered tech debt of sense, and like in a way. So sometimes you need to do it incrementally. So a hybrid setup that you have both modules and standalone is completely fine.
Well, and I think
all we're advocating is the idea of moving away from modules towards standalone, and that is a journey that may be shorter or longer depending on your application.
When I think outside of like just to chunk it up and make it easier to do the migration, I think there are reasons right now, like that Justin and I were talking about, where we just can't fully make that commitment yet because of outside reasons. And so I think even just going forward and being like, look, we don't want to stay in the past, but we have to keep these modules around, and having kind of that hybrid situation. I don't know. I think it's totally fine. I honestly think it's some progress, which is better than no progress and just sticking around with modules forever. So,
and with these answers to the idea of a hybrid temporary situation, that's part of your selling point to management. That, hey, this doesn't all have to happen at once. And to Justin's point earlier, the idea of going into a component to make a change, fixing a bug, adding a feature or something else at those points in time for those given components, make those changes. incrementally work towards a bigger goal without
Yeah.
having to tell management, yeah, we're going to stop doing all development for the next 6 months.
We're and just do this thing that you'll have no return on.
But if you chunk it up and it's, hey, I'm adding an extra 15 minutes to this story.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. All right. That's an easy sell.
Yeah. Also, I'm a fan of hybrid for the transgression period. But the thing is, you should really get rid of NG modules. And your future you will thank you, because what you can tell management is, hey, we have this big bundles, and there is no way to split this up easily. No way, except from ditching NG modules, which will make it possible to split those things up. It will not do it automatically, but it makes it at least possible. And then you can start, if you then introduce deferred loading and stuff like that, that will automatically pull some things out of this big chunk into smaller chunks. And you can, you need to have someone that takes a look at those things deliberately, like, okay, I'm going to build and I'm going to see what's happening to my bundles, because that is probably a surprise and completely different as what you were expecting. Bundling is surprising. Not really to me, but for most people are going like, why is this going there? And then you have to explain how a bundler works, and how a bundler is not magic, and it cannot find.
Oh, it's
it
not
cannot
magic.
say. No, it's not magic. It goes like, okay, this is used there, this is used somewhere else. Okay, I chip it together in one big. That's how it works. It's not like really smart and saying, okay, this is used by this component and this is also used by this component. I'm going to bundle it next to that component. That would make sense. That would be what I was doing. But the bundler is going, no, this thing is used by two other things. So I'm going to chunk it in a big thing. Although ES Build is doing a little bit more of the second and less of the first, Webpack is always the first. Webpack is going, okay, used in more than one place. Main bundle. Done.
It sounds like you have beef with
Webpack.
Yeah.
Long-standing beef.
He's like, okay, cool. I just want to put it out there. He's like,
you want to fill another episode?
Yeah, right. So one of the things I really love about the standalone is the ergonomics and the API of how the Angular team put it together. Because I really start thinking about it as like, when we talk about hybrid and we talk about this concept, like we can make a component standalone and we can still bring it into an NG module if the NG module is still used. Really, I think about it as like, now I've provided two ways that I can get to the component. So you now have flexibility, right, to get to the end game goal that you want to get to. It's like, I make my component standalone. That's like just going like to the farmer's market and getting my vegetables, my fruit, and I can just get it right there, right? Or I could go to the supermarket and get it as a TV dinner in an NG module, right? But there's two different ways that I could get that component, and now
there's only one healthy way.
There's only one healthy, right? So you're striving to get to that healthy way. You're striving to, not eat this processed food in a TV dinner, and you're trying to get to the standalone component. Nice. But in the meantime, that's not feasible because, I got to finish up some commits after this call. I don't have time to go to the market and get my veggies. I just got to pop in a TV dinner for lunch. So I can get there, but, there's ways. So I don't know. Wow, that was a long journey to finish my analogy, but
there's been some really good analogies here. I'm happy with it.
It hurts my heart though. Like it's good, but like, oh, poor people who love TV dinners, we're now calling them out.
But Justin, I like your call out of you have multiple ways of getting to that component, because with that incremental change of going to, yes, there's the providing side of I'm changing my component. It's a common component, whatever. I have a button that's no longer going to be declared as part of an NG module. It's going to be standalone. So you have that side of things, but what you then have is multiple ways of consuming it, like you said. Then you can incrementally change the consumers of that to say, hey, I'm getting that from an NG module, to say, yeah, but the only thing I'm using from there is a button. So I'm just going to bring in the button in there. And then you're kind of like, that crack in the windshield is spidering out.
Question for you guys before we do some wraps and final thoughts. There is a lot continually being rolled out. And I was curious if, to speak to the ideal scenario, Mike, that you were talking about earlier, if you do have this ideal choice of choosing exactly what features to start implementing in what order, are there things, because, there's signals, control flow, deferred loading, standalone, the list goes on. Are there things that you would prioritize to do in a particular order, or is it just kind of like have at it chaos roll? Like what are your thoughts? Don't everyone offer up thoughts at once, please.
So there are lateral comparisons between ng modules and standalone and ngIf versus control flow. Obviously, there's other things besides if, but you know what I'm saying. Those things are lateral moves. It was an ng module, now it's standalone. It was ngIf, now it's at if. Those are one-to-ones, pretty straightforward of what you're doing within there. When you get into something, because you also mentioned defer, there's some mental shift of what you're going to be doing with pulling something like defer in, that there is no really existing parallel aside from ng containers and conditionally showing things in ifs and else's within there. So I would say standalone and control flow are pretty safe to move to, with the caveat and understanding that control flow is still in developer preview. So you may, depend upon risk tolerance of putting something like that into production, maybe hold off on control flow, but standalone is definitely one, with control flow being 1A for me and the risk tolerance that I have for the applications that I'm working on.
Yeah, I agree with Mike, and I really love control flow, but as he said, it is still in developer preview, and that is a big red flag for management overall.
Okay.
Orange, or maybe yellow, not red.
I dressed for the occasion. They think it's a red flag. They are wrong, but they still think it.
Yeah, man, Elmo's red, and he's had a tough week, so like we need to go easy on it on red.
Wait, did Elmo really have a tough week? Did I miss something?
Yeah.
Oh no!
Oh, yeah. It started off good, and then it kind of. Go look it up.
So, best advice right now is things that have comparisons, and it's really like an upgrade in your code. Go ahead and have at it, especially if it's out of developer preview. Whereas the other things that take more of a mental shift, you can take your time on. Like they don't, because I feel like there's so much, right, that you could start doing. So I just feel like prioritizing.
The thing is, I'm going to be back to talk a little bit more about signals, and I love signals, and I love what that will do for applications and for developer experience, because that will be a lot. But in reality, if you start building with it, it's really rough around the edges. It's not ready for prime time. It saddens me to say so, but it's really not ready for prime time. At the same time, Angular isn't just ready for it, because if you go into signals, you really need a new way for two-way binding, which is a model, which is not there yet. It will be hopefully in 17.3 or 18, but it's not there. And basically, that is what you need to get to a good level of re-architecting your application, because right now you can use signals. I've written an entire thing with signals, and it works like a charm, but that has like a huge buy-in, and you really need to know what you're doing. And I had to do like 6 iterations before I had something that was okay. This is possible. Possible, not possible, but possible. It's possible quite quickly, but code that I would able to merge into a production application is something different. And it took me quite a while to get to that version where I was okay. I would allow this in a production application.
Okay.
Built in the wild is not always ready for production. Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
That doesn't mean that I don't want to do those, because that's how we learn, and that's how we discover when it's ready for production and when it's not. But and that helps you form opinions.
No, absolutely. And it is, I think, overwhelming I talk to different devs who are just looking at the array of things they need to start implementing. And so I think it is important to help prioritize people and point them towards just
Yeah,
easier
I think
paths.
yeah, I think now the easier path, I'm pretty sure for new components and new stuff, Signals is way easier than what we had until now. Really. Even with the current rough edges, it's still easier. You need a couple of helper functions to tackle the big hurdles, but after that, it's quite easy to work with.
Going back to the whole selling this to management, and especially with standalone, a long time ago I heard somebody say something that is really stuck with me, and that's when you're working on the cutting edge, it's you that's doing the bleeding. And the reason I bring that up is that may be a counterpoint brought up to standalone, but because a lot of these things have been come out recently with Angular, but standalone, if I remember correctly, was introduced in version 14. So it's been out for quite a while. It's rock
It's
solid,
almost 2 years.
stable, and everything else. Yeah, it's been there for a while. There's not much reason to not upgrade to it or move towards it, even if you're not on the latest version of Angular. Even if you're back on, I think it was 14.2 is where the number that sticks in my head. But even if you're back on 14, 15, 16, and maybe not quite to 17, standalone's still available to you.
Love it. I love it. Are there any last thoughts on standalone or anything Angular related before we move on to picks?
Can we talk about the one question that was just posted to chat?
Oh, yeah. Let me plop it on the screen. From your perspective, what problem does standalone components attempt to solve finally?
Simplicity. NG modules are a redirect and an additional concept that Angular developers need to understand to be able to construct an application. By removing that and understanding or moving the onus of defining what dependencies and what something needs to be able to work directly where it is versus in a separate file is a really good concept. That's the localization of that code and dependency definitions. So simplicity and less mental load.
Yeah, less mental load. And indeed, simplicity are the big takeaways from this. And you can look at your component and you know what it is using and where it is coming from. The big thing I had against modules was that there is this file that is importing stuff, and somehow this file magically decides what I can use in my template, what directives work and what directives don't work, and what components are available and what's not available. That gets decided somewhere in a cloudy thing next to the right or to the left, depending on which way you turn.
For those that were around since the infancy of Angular, defining the dependencies for a component used to be inside of the component file, not in a separate ng module file. That was added sometime during the beta phase of version 2. So initially the mindset was defining your dependencies where you are, but for build reasons and things that Sander talked about earlier, ng modules were introduced to solve a different problem that kind of took that out of the hands of the component where you're defining things. So it's kind of like going back to the initial intentions, and it makes sense. The idea of an ng module is just a redirection or indirection.
And now we see the same comment popping up that we saw back then. Yeah, but I need to import like 1,000 things in my component. And we need to import another 1,000 things in my next component. I have a single answer for you. Your components have too many responsibilities. You need to split them up.
You might need 4 components instead of 2 for your application, right?
And on top of that, the organization and grouping that you had with modules, you can do that with arrays and barrels with standalone.
Jeff in with his dad joke.
Jeff's getting cheesy up in here. Oh God, I love it. By the way, I'm gonna make him my pick. He has a YouTube channel. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get the link, and that's gonna be my pick for the day.
I watched that earlier today.
Did you?
It was fun, yeah. And I'm not going to comment whatsoever on it. Go look. Go look.
All right. do you gentlemen have anything else to say, standalone or otherwise? Or are we ready for picks?
I think my pick would be take a look at the model thing that is coming on, because it is going to be around soonish, and it might be something you didn't realize, but it is in the RFC.
Say this, which piece?
Model.
Is this
It's in the RFC. I can find.
Yes, I'm like frantically pulling up GitHub. Because yeah, it's been a hot second.
Okay, I'm going to watch you sweat.
It's been a hot second since we've had an open request for comments, right?
Yeah, it's in a closed one. It's like the ones
it's in
from Signals.
I thought it was like a new open one. I was like,
no, this is all decided on. Otherwise, it would not be in one of the next versions of Angular, right?
I'm with you now. Okay, I thought you meant there was a new request for comments
but
open. I was like, walk, don't
this
run.
thing is people glanced over this one for some reason, and it wasn't spoken about. But it is going to be a very important one, because if you want to do something with forms or things that communicate both ways, it is the next form of bidirectional bindings.
When you say next version, you mean like 18 or the next? Like, okay.
No, it will be 17.3 or 18.
Oh, okay.
Probably. You cannot say for sure until it's there.
Yeah. I like it. That's a good pick.
I have on good authority, Alex, that it will be.
Oh, okay. So it's called
3.
My Pick was Tech Time Today, and I will get a link. I will find one and put it in the comments. But
probably he will have it handily. He will probably provide you with a link.
Handily. Justin, Mike, picks for today? Anything highlighting?
Mike's, I do have a pick. So our previous episode with Jordan, we were talking about the Apple headphones, right?
Oh yeah.
So I went out and got some, and I'm wearing them during meetings when I have like 7 or 8 meetings all day long, and a little more comfortable than the buds in the ear. So that's nice. But they fit really snug, and they get a little warm on my head. So there's that. But the audio quality is amazing. So these meetings are, rich bass, and it's great if I was listening to music. I don't really listen to music with them too much, but the meetings, it's comfortable to wear them all day. So
okay. But you wouldn't like go mow the lawn in them.
I mean, they look like they're lawn mowing earmuffs. So yeah, if I had lawn to mow, I would mow it.
There's like something about sweating in your headphones that I just cannot abide by. I don't like. I'll see people like lifting, right, like with their head. I'm like, how? Maybe their ears aren't like that. Maybe my ears are weird.
Yeah, these get warm
warm.
We cannot say you have those things on top of them.
That's true. All right, Mike, did you come up with anything? You got anything?
No, I got nothing. No, I'm pickless.
Now, did you do nuggies or did you do the chicken burger?
Chicken burger. No, it was a chicken sandwich. It was a chicken breast sandwich.
Oh,
that's a burger in some parts.
I have another pick.
Soon
there is an Angular Air with Signals something.
Yes, I am actually forcing Sander because he was like, do you want me to talk about this or do you want me to talk about that? And I was like, why not both? Right. So he shall be gracing us with his delicate Signal demos that I've heard exist but have not seen yet. So we shall see.
I want to talk about the idea of Signal best practice, Signal inception. Should you have Signal of signals or? Yes.
Array. Yeah, I don't think it really matters because it's like Alex said, just throw them on the ground, right? Like.
I don't have a bit key on my keyboard.
I feel like there's absolutely, correct me if I'm wrong, absolutely no way to hurt yourself with signals.
We'll find out. We will find out. Make them bleed on that episode. We'll find out.
All right.
I'll give it a pick. I'll give it a pick.
Oh, tell us.
I've been using it more and more. Stream Deck.
Oh, yeah.
Very helpful. Not just for doing live streams, but for productivity as well.
I want to talk more about that. So please, lock it away because, I want to know more.
That's
about
on
that.
your to-do list.
Okay.
Not mine.
Have
I'll answer questions.
a wonderful Friday, everybody. We're gonna hear a word from our sponsors and sign off, but we will see you next time, everybody. Mwah! Bye.
Bye bye.
Angular Air is sponsored by Kendo UI for Angular. We have over 100 components built from the ground up in Angular or each framework and library that it's built for. So not only do we have Angular on the JavaScript side, but we have Kendo UI for React, jQuery, and Vue as well. And if you're on the .NET side of life, we have things for Blazor, Maui, WPF, and so much more. All of our libraries are themable, customizable, and of course come with killer professional support. So try it out for free today at kendoui.com.